Hey cousins, welcome to Brown Liquor and Bad Ideas.
Welcome, cousins, to this episode of Brown Liquor and Bad Ideas. I'm your host, Cornell Wright, the People's Lobbyist. Join me for a quick one on this National Whiskey Day. Cousins, first of all, let's have a toast to National Whiskey Day, right? Brown Liquor and Bad Ideas. So also, cousins, I've been away for a while. Let me just kind of give you a brief rundown of what's been going on in my world and kind of what's been going on in the larger world as well. Keep in mind that as the People's Lobbyist, my opportunity is to provide educational information, to provide some advocacy activities, and also just to help you kind of understand and kind of bring things together for you, make things a little clearer, hopefully. And so with that in mind, let me also say that I've had a chance to travel out to the West Coast some, had a chance to visit some people out in California. Wonderful time, great times out there. Moving around the country, there were a number of different places that had COVID outbreaks that are a little more extensive. And in fact, I did get a chance to encounter and become infected by COVID-19, or one of the various variants of that. Fortunately, I was double vaccinated and double boosted, and so my experience was relatively minimal and was able to deal with it with over-the-counter medications. So on that, I'd like to give a sincere thank, at least from me personally, to everyone who had the chance to develop, working on the vaccines, administered the vaccines, distributed, paid for it, whatever associated with making sure I got it into me, and I hope you got it into you for COVID-19 vaccinations and boosters. Here's that one. As I mentioned at the top of the show, today, July 28th, is in fact National Scotch Day. Now, for those of you who understand, Scotch comes from Scotland, whiskey from some various parts of the United States, so it's brown liquor. Hey, it's all part of the family, right? So let's have that one more quick one for that one. So cousins, here's a couple other things that are kind of important. We unfortunately didn't get a chance to have a show in June, which is part of our annual recognition, which is the beginning, the origin of our program, which was the ratification of the United States Constitution. That preamble beginning with "We the People." And "We the People" continues to be what, in my mind, is most important as your people's lobbyist and advocate for you, as well as what's moving forward. And so let me just touch on a couple things that have kind of been, I think, significantly important as for "We the People," or all you cousins of mine. We certainly have had a chance to see, and I'm going to cover on some later shows, how the impact of our climate's continuing to have impact on all of us. Inflation, we had a show a little bit earlier, cousins, and let me ask you to start to hear and see that, recognize inflation is something that is a part of our economic system. It's not nice, we don't appreciate it, and it's not good, right? I don't know about you, but I had an experience recently in which I had a triple digit pumps at the gas station. Thing was going on so much I got scared. When it got to 100, I stopped it because the first time it had ever happened to me, and I didn't want to have to go home and explain to my wife on the credit card bill why there was $100 at a gas station. Okay? But it was reality. And that was because I let my tank get too low, and that was the price of the gas, and you do the math, right? But so fortunately, the gas prices have started to recede and come down. Why? Because in the larger scale of things, the global production, as we talked about before, of gasoline is starting to catch up, production/supply is starting to catch up with demand in the United States and the world. Keeping in mind, oil is a world commodity. Everybody in the world wants it and needs it. And so we don't have any more of a need or respect or opportunity for it than what our dollars are willing to pay for it. You with me, cousins? So that's the price. So fortunately, it's starting to go down. Hopefully some other things will start to go down as well that makes it more meaningful and significant to us in all of our pocketbooks so we can keep more, right? Keep more of our own money. And inflation. And so with that, cousins, keep in mind as we're starting to move into this political season that everyone who is touting or saying what he or she would do about inflation, you ask them specifically, what are you going to do or propose economically in order to reduce inflation or the impact inflation has on you. Don't get caught up, cousins, or believe these very flowery and beautiful words and all this kind of stuff. Ask them what specifically on economic principles are they going to be able to do. The short answer, cousins, if they're not a part of the Federal Reserve, which has responsibility for money supply, or they're not a major corporate executive who can change the prices of his or her organization's price to you, they have very minimal impact. You with me? That's the government. So don't fault the current administration necessarily, or don't buy into somebody saying what all they're going to do, because it's something that is larger and only we as the consumers, the Federal Reserve, and the actual companies who are providing products have any real impact on that. You with me, cousins? Simple. It's supply and demand. You increase the demand, the supply, the price goes up. You equalize those two, the prices become stabilized. You reduce demand, the prices also go down. Remember a couple years ago when we were all kind of caught up in COVID? Think about what the price of gasoline was then, okay? When everybody stayed home a couple years ago and there was no driving, what happened? The price of gasoline dropped like a hot potato, right? We're getting out now. We want to go on vacations. We want to drive around with our family and friends. We want to go do things. Price goes up. You know, that's the story. All right? So, cousins, keep that in mind. Because, pardon me. This is the election season for the 2022 elections. We've heard a lot about them. And so let me give you a couple ideas and recommendations. The first one was about the discussion about inflation, what someone's going to do in regards to that. The second one, which I think is critical at this point in time, cousins, is let's go back to January 6, 2021, in which President Biden was supposed to be sworn in, or if you will, authorized based upon the congressional vote and understanding of the electoral colleges, the votes coming in to the Senate, to the House of Representatives and the Senate, right? We saw that on TV, cousins. We saw what happened. All of us were horrified that there was an armed mob that was attempting to interrupt the long-standing tradition of the United States of America having a peaceful, democratic transfer of power. Peaceful, democratic transfer of power. Now, if we watch it on TV, cousins, don't you think the rest of the world was also watching that? Yeah. I was embarrassed, cousins, and you should be too. Because we had a mob that was attempting to stop our peaceful transfer of power, which is one of the hallmarks and one of the beacons of United States democracy. We now know, after January 6th and the January 6th hearings, that it was much deeper than a spontaneous, even though directed by the former president, a spontaneous mob action. It was planned. There were armed people there. They then, in fact, did kill some police officers. They attempted to violate and impact a federal legislative activity to occur. In fact, it was treasonous, cousins. And when you think about it, it used to be not long ago that the punishment for treason was being shot by firing squad, right? Keep that in mind. Treasonous to the United States of America. That's all there is. That's the end of the discussion. You can drop the mic, right? What was good? What was there about that was supporting the United States of America? And by the way, cousins, let me go back to some of our earlier conversations. Think about it. There has not been any congressman, senator, all the Congress people, third of the senators, any other governor or any other elected official who occurred or was elected in the 2022 elections who said that his or her election was inappropriate because of some issues associated with the election. Zero, except for one person. And we now know through all the testimony of January 6th that that one person knows that it is a lie. And if he doesn't know it's a lie, it's mean that he is disconnected from reality. You can't have someone running the United States of America, cousins, who's disconnected from reality, right? And so now, cousins, you have a number of people who are attempting to run for various offices around the country who are supporting the position that the lie, which is in fact that former President Trump won the election when in fact he lost both the popular election and, for the second time I might add, and the Electoral College election. He lost. His mind, apparently, or whatever other motivations he may have, is not allowing him to say that out loud. And he's having a number of people around the country who are then supporting that position. Cousins, there's nothing you can say that's wrong. Let me give you an example, cousins. There were people, in fact, some people still do, believe the earth is flat at one point in time. They believe that with sincerity and with all their hearts. And that's okay, cousins. But if they want to believe that, that's not anyone or anyone's that you want to have running your government on either a city, state level or federal level. We don't need that because that shows that those people are disconnected from reality, cousins. If you don't believe that the earth is round, go out and go out to NASA, www.nasa.org, and you will see all of the various photographs has been taken from various space missions showing the earth is in fact round. Okay, cousins? There's no debate. It's all it is fact. Okay? So now you have people who are believing that the earth is round, basically by believing, if you will, the big lie was correct, that one person in the whole country, all the votes didn't go his way, when in fact we now know that there were attempts to sabotage the election, to steal the election, to ask for people to find additional votes, to come in with false electors, to then have an armed insurrection against the government, and to have over 60 court cases, of which all were thrown out except for one. That's just because people wanted to move closer to or away from where the people were counting. All those things were thrown out. And people are still going to say, and they want your vote to say that, well, gee, I want to represent you. No, cousins. No. Big no. So that's someone who has lost touch with where we are in 2022. Just as those who had thought that the world was flat, excuse me. And we now know indeed that the world is round. And so anytime you hear someone say, oh, I believe in the big lie, or I believe that the vote was stolen, yes, it was attempted to be stolen. Okay? Let's keep that in mind. There was a lot of attempts since the end of November. In fact, let me add to that list. There was also states that people were requesting to stop the vote counting, okay, and or to accelerate the vote counting depending upon which state was going and what the numbers were. Come on, cousins. There's such a thing called consistency. And by the way, cousins, just one other quick point. When someone tells you something that's contrary to what you've seen with your own eyes and you know as being fact, that's called gaslighting. We've had an episode on that. Gaslighting is a form of torture. A form of torture, cousins, in which you're trying to change someone's mind to modify it, to do something that you want them to believe, which they know in fact is not the truth. Okay? As the old expression goes, you're going to believe me or your lying eyes. Well, cousin, your eyes are not lying to you. All right? In this regard. So, cousins, you take care of yourselves. Happy Whiskey Day, or excuse me, Scotch Day, for lack of better phraseology. Whiskey in the United States, if you like United States brands. And take care of yourselves. COVID is still out there, still rampant. Make sure you get vaccinated and boosted. And don't vote for anybody coming up in the election who believes in the big lie, because they're like telling you the earth is flat, and we know it's not. Take care of yourselves, cousins. We'll see you next time on Brown Liquor and Bad Ideas.
We are the people. We are
Brown liquor and bad ideas is intended for the participation of responsible adults of legal drinking age who wish to engage in substantive virtual discussions and social drinking for entertainment purposes only. Brown liquor and bad ideas does not advocate the abuse of alcoholic beverages. Choosing to participate in any of the drinking activities shared in the program should be made with moderation and caution and is the sole responsibility of the user.